When I was maybe 14 years old, or between 13 and 14 years old, I read this book, The Razor's Edge. And this book was written and published in 1944, The Razor's Edge, a book about an American fighter pilot traumatized by his experience in World War I, who sets off to find transcendent meaning in his life and ends up finding some in India. The epigraph to the book, taken from one of the Upanishads, reads, "The sharp edge of a razor is difficult to pass over. Thus, the wise say, the path to salvation is hard." Okay, so I read that at the age of 14. My father gave that book to me because he wanted me to go to medical school, and he thought, well, if I read Somerset Maugham, who was a physician, I could be both a writer and a doctor at the same time, because Somerset Maugham was a physician, actually, and a writer. What is that quote from the Upanishad saying? It's talking about Gyan Yoga. Gyan Yoga is the path to enlightenment through the intellect. The path to enlightenment through the intellect. And what that quote says, that the intellect actually cannot correct the mistakes of the intellect. The intellect cannot correct the mistakes of the intellect. You have to go beyond the intellect, but you can through a process called inquiry and through actually your own meditation and various ways of seeking the source of experience. So before we talk about that, let's talk about what is the mistake of the intellect. Well, the mistake of the intellect, in one simple word, is naive realism. That means the intellect begins with the assumption that the world is material, number one. But the intellect also, as we are programmed into the conditioned mind, also is based on subject-object split. So according to our intellect, or according to the experience that we all have through the intellect and through what we call rationality, there is something called subject-object split. So the subject is this, and the object is everything else. So look around you right now. There's you and there's everything else. Okay, so there are objects, there's furniture, there are people, there are animals, there's the sky, the moon, everything. So you and then everything else, including this phone, this stand, this book, etc. That's our normal experience. I'm here, everything else is out there. So this is the mistake of the intellect that says, I'm in the world instead of I am the world, or I'm in the world instead of the world is in me. This is a fundamental mistake, because you are an expression of the totality as well, in the same way as anything else, like this, or those objects on my bookshelf. So that is actually our experience, isn't it? But it is a learned interpretation of experience, learned interpretation. So let's examine whether that learned interpretation of experience is actually correct. Can we do that through inquiry and through transcendence? Look at any object right now. Any object, I'll take this object. my earpod. It's an object, and I'm here, and that's there, so that is separate from me. And so is everything else. Other people, animals, stars, galaxies, the moon, the sun, all separate from me. Now, instead of using the word object, instead of using the word object, use the word experience, because before you can call this an iPhone, you have to experience it. Okay. And where do you experience it? You experience it in your own awareness. Any object that you see, you experience it in your own awareness. And therefore, that object is appearing as a form or a phenomenon in your awareness. But what is that object made of? Okay, that object is made of qualities of awareness, which we call perceptions. Perceptions. Every object is made of qualities of awareness that we call perceptions. You can see it, you can touch it, you can make sound with it, you can smell it, you can taste it. So that object or all other objects are modifications of you as that perceptual activity. In other words, this object is not separate from you. You and the object are actually the same phenomenon. You meaning your perceptual activity in your own consciousness gives rise to the experience of this in the form of the five senses. And then, of course, we interpret that as an iPhone. That's a human construct or a statue or book or whatever. But actually, it's a modified form of yourself as a human experience, not the experience of any other animal or sentient being, only as a human experience. The Umwelt, or the bandwidth of perceptual activity that is human, certain range of the visual spectrum, certain range of the auditory vibration, certain range of tactile and olfactory and other perceptual modifications of awareness, whether they are sound, whether they're taste, their smell, their texture, they're still modifications of yourself. So when you bring that interpretation to this, then there's no separation between you and this. Furthermore, this is not material. It's made of perceptual activity and a human perceptual activity. Everything that you experience is a human experience. Everything. Therefore, the universe that we experience is a human universe. This is what Tagore said when he was speaking with Einstein about and challenging Einstein about naive realism. So look around you now and see that all that you call the world is actually a modified form of yourself. There's no separation. And then when you bring that understanding and your presence to any object, then whatever the object is, it becomes beauty. When you bring the same presence to another being, even a being that you think is your enemy, but when you bring your presence, when you infuse your presence into the experience of another being, that experience becomes love. So beauty, love, and truth all go together. And once you have that experience, beauty, truth, and love, then there is no separation. There is only love. And soon that presence infused into every object of experience actually becomes truth, goodness, beauty, and love. I was looking at some of my notes the other day, and this is what I found. which was very beautiful, even though I think I wrote it a long time ago, but I kind of resonated with it. Here's a quote from myself: "We create the world as we go along." I've used this other one before. Your body is a space that sees, that hears, that perceives. But even more important, when you look at any object or any person with presence, then that object becomes divine. That object is divine. You are the divine experiencing yourself as everything, as objects, as people, as animals, as plants, as trees, as the stars, as the moon, and as the universe. I found it. That which looks through your eyes is God. Look at anything, and you have realized God. Now, look at anything, and you have realized God. So can the mistakes of the intellect be corrected by the intellect? Yes, through reflection, by using inquiry and direct experience. Because when you directly experience any object, you don't find matter. You only find your own perceptual activity. So think about that. Look at the world through the eyes of God. That which looks through your eyes is God. Look at anything and you have realized God. Think about this. I hope this is useful. I felt like sharing it with you. Maybe it is useful, maybe it's not, but there it is.